Yeah.
All right, let's do this thing.
Good.
Good evening, everyone. The time is 6:31 p.m. on Tuesday, March 30th, 2021, and I'd like to call the school committee meeting to order.
Hold on.
Take two.
Very good, very good.
Okay, we're good?
Yeah.
Okay. First up on the agenda is the consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to look at the meeting minutes?
I did. Mhm.
Any comments, questions, anything? No? Great. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved unanimously. Next, I can't see
Is Marcus?
our attendees. Can you switch it over? Is Marcus on? So that's pretty good. Right along. Okay. Next up, under continuing business, the reopening plan process.
Yeah, so tonight, we're here, last week, the committee, talked about the changes that the commissioner is asking all districts to do. So tonight, we need to come to consensus on how, we're going to, move forward with that. So I believe last time, the committee was considering not just doing K5, but doing K6 at East Meadow. And also had a discussion about doing 7 and 8 at high school. So,
And then remind me, but we were also talking about with the high school, even though they would be going back 7, 8 of doing Wellness Wednesdays
yes.
remote because it was earlier than the date.
Mhm.
Do we have any, and then do we need to mention pre-K also
Yes, it will be pre-K to 6.
at East Meadow
At East Meadow, starting Monday.
starting Monday, April 5th, which is why, and tomorrow is essentially a remote,
Tomorrow is
a remote
a
Independence Day.
full
like a snow
remote, yes, full remote asynchronous day so that teachers can have an opportunity to ready their room. The custodians will be moving more desks into the classrooms because of needing to now have both cohorts in at the same time. So there'll be a lot of activity happening in the both of them.
Okay. So I think what we need to do is, I think we need to make a series of votes, perhaps. This is what I'm envisioning at this point, is that we would need a vote for pre-K to 6 for East Meadow, for full in-person 5 days a week. And then we would need a separate vote for 7th and 8th grade, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, with Wednesday being, now, is the Wednesday, though, my question.
It's only for the 2 weeks.
Okay, so Wednesdays for the 2 weeks until that April 25th deadline. I don't know if Bill or Stephen are on, but my question, or maybe Cheryl, do you know, is it gonna be like a Wellness Wednesday, 100% remote for the Wednesdays for the?
So,
I don't think
Stephen-
here.
No,
Stephen, is Stephen on? If not, Ally could speak.
Steve is on here,
Okay,
and Bill's on, I hope he's Bill's on.
yeah, Wellness Wednesday is the Granby Junior Senior High School
okay,
initiative.
I just want to make sure,
Yeah, I think that works for
yeah,
the first 2 ones.
for the first 2 Wednesdays, but I just want to make sure that we're understanding what, if there's different versions of Wellness Wednesday out there, so I want to
Yeah.
make sure that
Right.
we're.
Are we saying that that would be ending on the 16th?
Okay,
So,
so, no, the 16th is,
Yeah,
vacation, so it's really only.
it's 2 weeks, so it will happen on the 7th and the
7th,
14th.
Well, isn't the 14th?
No, I mean,
Oh, no, the 21st.
those would, if the 16th is the last day, that would be just 4 days, and then after April vacation.
It would be 5 days.
Right, starting on the 26th.
Okay.
But I just want to know what the Wednesdays look like, so can you unmute Steve?
Yep, he's right there.
Alex, do you need to unmute him or can he unmute himself? Okay,
Hello. So the question, if I understand it, is just which Wellness Wednesdays that we'd be doing. So it's just the Wellness Wednesdays that were implemented on March 17th, I believe. So it's the schedule. Students are in their classes, synchronous classes until approximately 11 o'clock. They break for lunch and they have asynchronous time in the afternoon.
okay, but and they'll be remote for those days? For those
Yes.
first Wednesdays, okay.
Yep.
I can make sure we capture it all correctly. And then for East Meadow, or pre-K through 6, which is East Meadow, starting the 5th, full 5 days
Yes.
going, there's no Wellness Wednesday or, no, okay. Does anybody have any other questions or discussion about that? Why does this feel like it's so?
Well, because you had plenty of discussion last week about it. We still do not have information regarding the return of the high school. So I'm hoping, we do have another school committee meeting next week.
Yep.
I'm hoping that we may have some more information, about that. I know the committee was considering the 26th, which would be the Monday after
Monday
vacation.
after vacation, so, so that's part of what we need to discuss too, but I don't know if we don't want to get sidetracked, should we, take it one step at a time and, move forward? So can I have a motion for the East Meadow portion starting April 5th?
I'll make a motion to have pre-K to 6th grade students start at East Meadow on April 5th, 5 days a week in person.
I need a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any other comments or anything on that? Okay, and then can I have a motion for the 7th and 8th graders at the high school?
I'll make a motion to have the 7th and 8th graders at the high school to start in person on April 5th, except for Wednesdays.
For the first
For the
two
first, it
Wednesdays?
will be April 7th and April 14th.
Okay. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Now, for the high school, meeting 9 through 12, and 7 and 8 returning on full 5 days a week on the week of the 26th. We had talked about at our last meeting, going ahead with returning the high school 9 through 12 on the 26th. Stephen, do you think that is gonna be still okay with the couple weeks going forward?
Yeah, I think we can manage. I think there's little things that we're trying to work out now, logistics in term, I think, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, we had local control and we had a plan and we probably overloaded some classes thinking we would be hybrid or remote for the remainder of the year. So we're just trying to figure out some spaces, but it's a small number of classes. So I think by the 26th, we should be in good shape. I think the only thing we're waiting on is to see if the guidance from DESI changes anything 9 through 12.
So I think that's what Carol, you were kind of saying before, is we are meeting next week, so maybe we should vote for
That's what I was
the
just gonna say.
7th to return. So I'll make that motion.
So we'll say, 7th and 8th grade, we decided we were gonna go ahead. So
Okay.
7th and 8th grade will be returning full in person on the 26th for the full 5 days, starting that week. but I think we hold off until next week to vote on 9 through 12 returning to see if we have any DESI guidance.
Correct.
And if we need to make any other adjustments, and Stephen, that'll give you guys another week to see where you are with scheduling, if we need to make any further adjustments. Does that sound good for?
I just didn't think 5 and 6 was in your motion to start full-time on the.
I mean, 7 and 8.
7 and
8. Sorry,
yeah.
why do I keep saying 5 and 6, 7 and 8? Sorry.
So it was 7 and 8 on the 4 days a week.
Right,
With the 7, but not on the 26th.
right. So you need that motion, right?
Well, we have to find out what the high school is gonna look like.
Okay.
So we can just make sure, I mean, we can take an amend what we just voted, but to make sure that we have it or actually, Jacqueline, how do you have it captured for?
I have it that you voted pre-K through 6.
Okay.
April 5th, and then 7 and 8, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday for April 7th and 14th. It's just Wellness Wednesday.
Right, and then, okay, so can we amend that motion to say that they'll be returning full time 5 days a week on the 26th?
Okay, so not, it won't be the,
The Wellness Wednesdays will end after the 14th and the week after we come back from break,
okay.
So they'll be full in person.
starting the 26th.
26.
Can I have a second on the amended motion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so that way, at least we have it sort of a little bit more clearly delineated. For that, we'll hold off for next week, which is April 6th. We will add to the agenda that we'll discuss the high school returning, by high school, I mean 9 to 12, returning on the 26th. And, see if we have any further DESI guidance. But we had talked about even without the DESI guidance, moving ahead with 9 through 12. So we can pick up that conversation next week and see if we still want to go forward with that. Because the goal is we want, being a small district, we want to try to do that. And if there's additional guidance and things, we can maybe backtrack, I guess. All right, does everyone feel good with that? All right, moving on.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent search. Oh, do we have a safety committee? Sorry, do we have a safety committee update or?
No, we meet on next Tuesday, right before school committee.
Okay, sorry about that. Jumped around. All right, superintendent search.
All right, so Audrey and I have some information that's going to be handed out. We have a memo that's going out to school committee members. And there is a folder for each school committee members too that lists the 2 finalists that have agreed to move forward. So that's where we're at now. Just some information to highlight. The application for the Granby superintendency closed on Monday, March 1st. There were 18 total applications that we received. The search committee did meet an executive session on, the subcommittee met an executive session on March 3rd and reviewed the applications and brought forward 11 potential candidates to the full committee. And from there, we conducted 7 semifinalist interviews, and they were completed on Wednesday, March 17th, Friday, March 19th, Tuesday, March 23rd, Wednesday, March 24th. From there, the full committee thoroughly deliberated their choice of finalists. And like I said, when we started, there were 2 finalists that agreed to move forward. The 2 names that we have highlighted here for you are Dr. Elizabeth Bina and Mr. Stephen Sullivan. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to add anything?
I think it's important to add that we do need to have the discussion about site visits of the home districts and the finalists to be conducted by us.
So, yeah, I'm just gonna add a little bit about them.
Okay.
I didn't know if you wanted to. All right. Just a couple things to highlight. Dr. Bina currently serves as principal of Glickman Elementary in Springfield. She previously was an assistant principal in Gateway Regional School District, started her career as an early childhood educator and teacher. She's also an adjunct professor and has published on a variety of critical educational topics. Mr. Stephen Sullivan currently serves as the principal of Granby Junior Senior High School, and he's held that position since 2017, and previously was an assistant principal and principal of Holyoke High School. He started his career in education as an English language arts teacher. And yeah, sorry, I think I covered everything there as well. So of note, people will notice at the bottom of the memo that we'll have to take a look at possible dates in terms of school committee members visiting the site visits of the home districts of the finalists. And the finalists will also have a chance to visit our district and meet with different groups, including a public community group. And then the school committee will also have the opportunity to conduct an interview in public session with each finalist.
Excellent. Well, congratulations to our finalists. This is exciting news. So we need to talk about the site visits, and do we need to get those, try to hammer out those dates now, or, and then we have to work on getting the public part, right, for those open sessions?
Yeah, we kind of have to divide up our time a little bit too, because we can't have a quorum attending. We can attend as a community, we can all attend, but we're not talking or asking any questions or anything. But as far as their site visits, which we're thinking are all going to be virtual, that won't be virtual for them coming to us, but for us going to them. And we just kind of have to divide up our time, only two can go at a time, so.
Yeah.
I added into our folder also, by the way, I added in the flyer that we had put out that has a bit of our timeline. So there's a separate folder in your folder that says superintendent search. And also, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but at some point we have to figure out a way how we're going to organize questions. We obviously don't want to talk about that live, but covering, you know, who's going to take me to the area, or and how we want to make sure we all have adequate questions to provide them. So I guess the first step would be dates
Okay.
that were available.
So, and some of this needs to be done at school committee meetings, right? So our next meeting is, oh, this is fun with all the budget stuff too, right?
So we can have, you know, additional meetings just for, you know, the interview of the finalists, if that makes sense to do.
Okay,
The recommendation from Tracy Novick from MASC was not to hold more than, you know, 2 interviews in one night. So if we wanted to do them in one night, you know, that was fine. But if we wanted to separate them and do them on different nights, that was fine too. It sounded like with her recommendation, at least identifying you know, some dates where there were, you know, 2 of us available to kind of go to, or virtually go to, you know, and do the site visits of the current districts of the candidates. Like that would be one thing we'd want to look at. And then, you know, the same thing of availability for, you know, the candidates to visit the district here would be kind of the first thing to do. And then, you know, she also said you could either make it a really long day where when candidates visited your district, they ended with that interview at the end of their day, or not. And then you scheduled a different day and time for them to come back for their interview with the school committee.
okay.
So it's completely open.
So maybe now for the opportunity for school and community members, do we have to have, is that an additional committee, or it's just an open meeting? Anyone can come that wants to come.
So she recommended that one of the school committee members kind of facilitate and moderate that, just because, you know, we'll just have to be mindful and watchful of questions that, you know, are allowable or not.
And it would
But-
have to be virtual, right? Like it would be a
Virtual.
Zoom? Okay.
Yep, and it would be virtual and just open, obviously, to the public. So that's where we, definitely want to make sure it's publicized, on our website and, out in the community too, so that people were aware of the dates and times and things like that.
All right, so I guess we need to,
And just to clarify, Jill, again, usually you do all the site visits.
before the interviews? Okay. So just looking at the calendar, next week, do we want to try to schedule the site visits for next week? So, because we don't have a meeting on the 13th, so we could potentially, or, we could potentially put in because that school committee meeting for the 13th, because we have one already on the 20th, because the goal was to try to have it done as.
Yeah, we don't want to do it too far. So according to the flyer, we did put a timeline on the flyer, which is why I included it. And on the flyer, we had said we'd be doing site visits this week. And I
Okay.
think we were a little,
Overambitious.
yeah.
Well, technically, we could probably get one of the site visits done fairly easy.
So that might be where we need, correct. But I think we also need to, right, give them enough time to also say that they're available. And we can't just say like, this is the day, to give them a
Right.
couple of options.
And it would be during their school day, because of course you'd want to meet with groups that they would, or groups or individuals that they would put together for you. It sounded like it would be about a half day time frame, give or take. Based on and who they'd want, you to talk with.
Well, I mean, there's still a couple days left to this week, so the finalists are out there, so is it too soon to try to get something done? Oh, this Friday's Good Friday, never mind. I
The
forget.
school is open this Friday though.
Oh, it is. Right. So we could try to do something this week and see if we can make that work, and then we've got next week.
I wasn't, I could be available Monday.
Oh, okay. So,
I happen to be available this Friday.
I
And
would-
obviously other days during this week, I could take time off, but
Okay, so I'm actually available, I know it's soon, but I am available Friday as well. So Friday, April 2nd.
Second.
Jen, you're available.
okay,
Is anyone else?
I say, yeah.
I can make Friday work. I just have to do some rearranging. I happen to be off, but I've already got some things scheduled. But I think I can move them around. If, depending upon the time, I might be able to make the 5th work.
I could, well, do we all need to be there? on the
It can only be 2.
Okay.
So, I mean, if we've got two people available on the 2nd, and I can make myself available, then we have 2 people available on the 5th, but then we're telling them,
It would be just nice to get a few.
Right.
Like, and preferably not just,
Right.
within the next few hours, but maybe a little stretched out a little.
So going into the week of the 5th, is there any other days? Again, I don't know.
I don't have my work phone, so I can't look at my schedule for, but so what were the other dates on that flyer? Actually, I can just pull it up. I don't need to ask.
Sorry. I had it open in one of my windows. So by the week of the 5th and the 9th would be their interviews.
We can stray a little bit from the flyer. We're going to need to stray from.
No,
the
no,
flyer.
I didn't mean to say that we're locked into that. I just
Yeah.
want to know what the parameters are, what we were saying, because we don't want to stray too far
Right.
off
I
of.
feel like if we end up a week off, that's understandable. Because as of right now, we can't do the 7th because we all have a meeting on the 7th.
Mhm.
And obviously, just thinking, because all we need is 2 people available, so I don't know.
Well, and if it's during the day, and people had the time during the day, you potentially could do the 7th. Because it's only, they're not coming here
You're
and
right,
doing
it's
there. It's one or the other. So it's both.
So wait a minute, so we've got site visits there to their home districts, and then we're inviting them to come here for their interviews. So my preference, since there's only 2, just sort of talking it through, is
There's 3 things then, right? So it's it's virtual site visits there. It's them coming to spend a day in the district here.
Mhm.
And then it's also the interviews. So the piece here would, I don't know if we could employ anybody within district to, kind of support taking them around to different groups or doing the tours of the buildings or different things like that with any of the finalists. But again, Tracy had made a recommendation that if there was a school committee member here to kind of greet them in the morning, then if there was somebody available, school staff in district that could, kind of lead them through the day, then the virtual groups, depending on the size or different things like that with the teachers or the public, we just have to see where people felt comfortable and depending on what those look like, would then be later in the day. And that's where, a school committee member could step back in. Because it was also advised that it wouldn't make sense that a school committee member wouldn't be part of, a meeting with the candidate and, administration and things like that. Like they could certainly facilitate that group on their own.
Mhm. So I'm just, wishing I had been through one of these before so that I had a better understanding of
I
how.
was just thinking, Jill, as I had created all the next steps for the superintendent search, should I share that with them also? Maybe put that in the folder.
Mhm.
Sorry, I don't know why. Hadn't thought of sharing it before. And Jen, I have the exact same feeling that you're having. And I think Joe is too. Like, we're all feeling like we want to make sure we're doing this correctly, and it is new to all of us, so don't feel alone in that, for sure. So I'm just thinking, so we've got 2 dates, 4/2 and 4/5. And what are we planning on trying to use offer those dates for? Are those for? I think we should probably have a couple more.
No, I just want to know,
Yeah.
when we're pulling these dates out, what is so we've got a bunch of dates out there, but I know we have 3 things, but I feel like we need to have some of those things out, some of these dates outlined for specific purposes. So I need to think about it for myself because they're not all going to happen necessarily simultaneously, right? So one of the things is we need to have an in-person meeting here with both candidates, right? Not at the same time, but back to back. And that's when the community and everyone comes in. My preference right now is that we do that at one time, but maybe we don't.
They would each have a day.
They would each, because it has to be at the end of that day. It can't be 2 separate days.
I don't know that I'm following you. They would each have a separate day that they would come visit.
For their
the
site
district.
visit. I'm talking about their interview. So you're saying the site visit and the interview has to be on the same day.
Nope,
No.
it can be on different days. It can be
Okay.
on the same day, like however we
So
want to
then
structure
that's
it.
a discussion for us to have too. Do we want to see them after they've had a day full of meetings? We also have to consider giving them breaks, allowing.
Well, I'm thinking I want to have them have their day and have the interview afterwards so that we can get the feedback from the people that just spent time meeting with them, right?
So have them come back the second day for the interview.
For the actual interview, and it would be at a regularly scheduled time for a regular school committee meeting where people would be on camera, like, I don't know, I don't know if they're supposed to be an hour, 2 hours or whatever, but it could be 6, 7, and then,
So our next meeting though isn't after the 6th, is not until the 20th.
but we can add a meeting. We have enough time.
Okay, good. All right. I thought you were saying just come to a regularly scheduled. That's why I was like.
No, our regularly scheduled time, like, you know, it's gonna be in the evening so that community can,
Yeah.
participate, right?
Agreed.
So I'm thinking to try to start working backwards. If we want to have that school committee meeting, say on the 13th, because it's not going to be a budget meeting, it's not going to be anything else. It could be a dedicated super search meeting on the 13th. Then we know we've got these 2 weeks to get these other dates to go backwards. So I'm sort of all over the place, but this is how I'm thinking, is trying to pick a point in time that we want to try to have that, because then we're not going to be too far off of what our flyer date is. If we're meeting to have the, on the,
So
is Ally on? Can she pop in? Is she
I have a
here?
question.
Yeah, go.
On
go
the
for it.
13th, will we only interview one or both? Because
I was kind of hoping to
Both
do,
of, I would say both at that point.
because it's just two. It's not like we've got, a ton.
Yeah.
So we could do,
It's usually about an hour.
yeah, so we could do like 6 to 7 and then have a little bit of a buffer. And then, 7:30 to 8:30 or something is my thought.
I agree.
So that's at least a stake in the ground, right? Because we said the week of April 12th, trying to do the selection of superintendent. So we're a couple of weeks off of that, but at least we're trying to stick to that plan. So 4/13 will be the interview school committee meeting, right?
And so between now and then, we just have to get a time to do our virtual site visits to their districts and then the day for them to visit us here.
So it's a full day for them here? Okay. So we've got 4/2 and 4/5, so let's throw some more dates out here.
I think you're kind of tight. Trying to get this in by the 13th, because if you're talking about doing the site visits on the 2nd and the 5th, that's if the parties are available, or the 7th, then there's really no time to have them come and spend the day. I mean, you have the 20th, unless you did a school committee meeting
My
on
only
the.
request is not to do the 20th. I wasn't sure if I was going to make that meeting anyway.
Okay, well, then the 15th, or do it the week of the 27th. We're on the, you're still in the month of April, and that way because I don't see you being able to get both candidates, how you want to do it.
Plus with advertise, like if we're gonna get the word out to the community about dates and times and giving them, notice to participate, like that's gonna take time to be able to organize it all, get the information out, like, and then with the week of school vacation in there, that's going to take that opportunity out for both candidates, whether it's to visit or for them to come here.
Right. So my question was, and Jill, I think I forgot to ask Tracy this, was that for our community and that one for them with ours, it can be in the evening, right? So that like families and people that work don't have to take time off from work for that,
I think that was the
Right.
last portion of their
visit.
of their
here.
visit
So
here.
we should be able to make, because that's the big part that we really want to advertise, because the site visits that we're attending, right, nobody else is attending those.
So what you just said goes to the question that I asked before, and you guys just answered it differently. So you're saying the way that you guys are talking about it is that on the day of their site visit, we have their interview and community stuff at the end of that day.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm asking whether or not the day they come to our school here, we also have our community event where the people get to meet the candidate.
The meet and greet.
Correct,
It's not an interview, it's a meet and greet.
correct.
So is the meet and greet another thing that we have to do as well?
Yes.
But it's attached to the day that they visit here. So, and we can structure it kind of differently, like they could even go home or go wherever they're going and then attend a session virtually at night. You know, as long as we've set it up appropriately and
Gave enough notice.
well, and there's somebody there like facilitating, doing all of those types of things so that, for all the reasons I've already said.
Where I was kind of going with that was whether or not we could do both of those on the same night as well, but most likely not, because it would be on 2 separate days that they visited here. I'm just trying to think of community members being like, oh, go, I need to tune in tonight to go see, like, it'd be nice if the 2 candidates were on the same day, or can we make that a separate day from their visit here?
I think it's nice if they were on 2 separate days, just so that people have the opportunity to not sit for a lengthy period of time, kind of watching or asking questions. It gets, you know, and you're not worried about ending somebody's questioning or a conversation because you have to move on to somebody else.
That makes sense. Okay, so, I mean, so the week of the 5th, again, I'm not really saying out any days because I just have to take time. If I'm gonna go to, put on other days that work for the schools.
We have to reach out, like, I mean, we have to
No, I
talk to.
mean, you, Carol, and, you know, for the candidates to have their peers here.
Probably not Wednesdays.
Yeah, not Wednesdays, because, you know.
You know, it gets. Like if we wanted to try to uphold the 13th potentially.
Ally, are you there? I'm just wondering, because I know you were part of the committee and sort of like a co-chair, if not official co-chair, I can't remember, but just if I feel like we could use a little extra
Yeah,
help, please.
It's definitely gonna cost you. I'm just kidding. So you threw out so many dates, I was trying to keep up with them. I think it would be okay to try to get the site visits to and from done and over with prior to meeting with the candidate, because we just had the interviews. So when you were talking about timeline, I think, because your next meeting for school committee is on the 13th, right?
No, we have one next week on the 6th, and then we
Okay.
have the 20th.
Yeah, so I feel like you could probably look at that following week, giving everyone a week's notice and try to schedule the site visits to and from, and then that following week, schedule their interview.
Which following week are you on?
that's
I'm on the week of the 12th. I'm completely taking out the 19th to the 23rd
So you're
because
saying
nobody
site
will be
visits-
around.
So you're saying the site visits on the week of or potentially the week of the 5th, and then the week of the 12th to do the interviews. You think that there's enough time?
Yeah, I feel like, there's 3 days left in this week. You have 5 days next week. You could, well, minus the Wellness Wednesday piece, but you could probably do those first. I don't really see a point of doing an interview. This is just my personal opinion, a week after we did ours. I think you take that opportunity to get the candidates out there into the community, and we could probably do that piece and get that over with. And then that following week, the week of the 12th, you could schedule your interviews with the school committee. Or even one of them at the tail end of next week and then one the prior, and then make a decision on the 13th, unless that's too soon for everybody. And then you could push it off.
Right, because that's what I was gonna say, we'd give ourselves more time rather than, I know Tuesdays are part of our schedule, but if we could do it later in the week, then that gives us more days to fill in before.
And we are talking about 2 candidates. Typically you have 4. So we're not arranging site visits for 4. I just wonder what school year looks like when we all try to come back full-time in person towards the end of April. You know, when we started this whole process, we were talking about this is all going to be happening during budget season. So being mindful of all that. And I think there's some planning that goes into site visits and things like that. But if you have your organized schedule, it's really just picking a day. And that, you know, once you have that day, the whole thing just kind of plays out. So just my 2 cents in regards to that. You could really start as early as next week.
So do you guys already have that schedule built then for the site visits? No, okay. So I guess, so my remaining questions, which there's a lot, so I don't even know how to start. Okay. Let's try it one thing at a time. And I'm sorry, I'm totally monkeying this up, but I'm trying to make it make sense to me. And I feel like the camera's staring at me and I'm getting red. This is awesome. Okay, for the site visits to the candidates' districts, we need 2 school committee members, but who do we need on their end?
Nobody, they tell us.
They tell us. So the candidates should be able to provide us with those names. And then I know I was on a site visit for when Cheryl was a finalist at wherever it ended up she left for. And it was a Zoom call with a few people. And I think we were on the phone for about 30 minutes, but they had been meeting with other people. So they met with school committee, they met with school committee because she was already a superintendent, but they had said that they wouldn't necessarily have met with the home district school committee because if the person wasn't a superintendent. So they will set that up. The candidates will set that up.
We just,
And we
the
don't need
2
a
of us
schedule
need
for
to
that
just,
either.
they'll
So
give us
we
a
don't need, so
schedule.
that's the part, that's the easier part, I feel like, to say, hey, and there's 5 of us. I'm not sure what Stephanie's availability will be, but between the 4 of us, we should be able, because we can only have 2 of us
Correct.
on those anyway, right?
And I don't know, and we hadn't addressed this either, but whether or not now, like the 2 candidates, you know, I will be there or I will not be, you know, I don't know like how that, like who's the odd man out that doesn't go to anything essentially is like kind of where we're at. One of us isn't gonna go. Because you can only have 2 and there's 2 candidates. So, I don't know if there's, right, exactly.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, ideally, no matter who does what and participates in what way, I think the end result is like you're taking notes and you're taking information. And when it comes to, you know, sharing out about each candidate during the deliberation process, like that's where you would just kind of pool all the information together and say, well, on the site visits, like this is the information that, you know, I
They
thought was
provide us with-
relevant.
Do we have a set of questions that they ask, or they just give us information?
So we can talk about that too. I think that some of the questions that is in the document might be helpful to kind of be thinking about. Because they're not going to tell you, like, this is what we want you to ask.
Right.
So I think, you know, whether you want to go in with a set of questions that you have, you know, depending on, I guess, your style, you might just want to know certain things. But it's usually more of a conversation to kind of get to know somebody.
So I gotta say, I'm still with my original thought, which kind of mirrors what Ally was thinking. I think we should reach out to you guys as the super search, right? Would reach out to the candidates and see if they can get us some, because we really need the feedback for them, what dates their group of people would be available to. And then we can do, between the 4 of us, we should be able to make some time align, right?
So that, yeah, and that's where Tracy had asked to just come up with some dates that we were available and
Provide them. Like
and
it's-
she would reach out and
Right.
coordinate
Oh, so
that
this
for
is all
us.
going through Tracy. I missed that piece entirely. I thought you guys were
It
doing
is
that.
still going, we had requested that she still kind of handle that part for communication purposes. But yeah, so she had said to us that we should bring some dates that we're available and the district should hopefully be able to accommodate those dates.
So I'm not sure, but based on the conversation we've had around dates, it seems like between the 4 of us that are here, if we know we can make just about anything anything work, right? So if, if there's a day that we absolutely don't want to do, we can say that, but for me, at this point, if I have at least an afternoon's worth of time ahead of time, I can, for the most part, adjust my schedule. And so I feel like if these we're not going to be there, it's not going to be a 12-hour thing, right? It's going to be,
Probably a half day, like a few hours.
right, a few hours. And that depends upon how many people they give us too, right? Do we have a max number of people we're expected to talk to, or?
So some of the things, like I said, I should have probably shared it sooner. But usually it'll be, she said she'll request school committee, if it's available, central office staff, secretaries, custodials, building staff, and if possible, parents, students, or any municipal officials that they've dealt with.
But that wouldn't necessarily be separate. A bunch of different groups, right?
Usually it is.
Okay.
Usually you have like your teacher cluster, usually you have your admin cluster. It is kind of all,
So it's going to be several hours.
it will be a half a day.
Be during their working.
Correct. So, and like you're saying, Jen, if we want to tell Tracy that we are available from the 31st until the 8th, and they can pick a day and we'll make it work. And then give them the 9th and the 12th to do their site visits here. Carol, I hear you type up, but I'm assuming, are we
I
asking?
can't hear you.
Sorry, for the 9th or the 12th, that's where I was on your line of going backward design, like what are the days that Carol can host them? Do we need to move the
So,
13th?
okay,
back
that was
so
gonna
that
be my
Carol-
question. So when they come here, I'm the one facilitating their day.
Will
That's under
you?
discussion.
Okay.
So, one of us would show up to hopefully introduce them, but then, as Tracy kind of said it, we could hand them off to whoever that is willing to. I don't know if you're interested.
I'm
in that
fine, I'm
or-
fine with, because I was worried that they were going to be showing up and I was trying to figure out who was going to be coordinating it.
Right,
So I can coordinate their visits here, I know all the players that I need to get in touch with and how to, the
right.
sites and everything. So I'm happy to do that. And you want to do that? What is the dates?
Well, so that's why I'm wondering if we give them from now until the week of the 9th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th as opportunities, or do we want to cut it closer? And then Carol, as long as you would need between do we offer you the 9th, the 12th? Do we move the meeting not to be on a Tuesday, the 13th, but have it be on a Thursday, the 15th,
Only, I don't know if I can't do the 9th. The 9th would be difficult. for me.
Okay, so not the 9th, that's fine.
But are you still trying to do the 13th, or are you looking at doing it the 15th? Which is a Thursday night rather than,
I like your idea, Jen, of doing it on Tuesdays. I see the value in it, but then
I'm open to whatever. I'm just trying to make sense of this, like I said, about how we,
we have negotiations on the 13th.
Yeah.
so that's not a good day. All right.
I mean, if you could do the 15th, that would be the Thursday. And then that way there, it would open up Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for, well, not Wednesdays, because we don't, Monday and Tuesday of that week for visits here.
Monday.
Well,
But you
Because
said
if-
you can't do Tuesday?
What was that?
Tuesday.
Tuesday, the 13th, thing, we have,
Right, so Monday and Wednesday.
we already have a meeting. I don't remember
Well,
what time it is, but
Because that's the one that's Wednesday.
it's only, that's
You
only,
could do Wednesday night as for your interview. But what we're saying is Wednesday during the day for a visit to the school wouldn't work.
Right.
But if you wanted to do a school committee meeting on Wednesday, the 14th, or Thursday, the 15th, that would give us, Monday and Tuesday during
I
the
mean, we
day.
also come up to the option of, do we do their site visit, like Jill had mentioned, and they just have a very busy day, and then they interview with us after, but then we're meeting twice as often versus having them one night. Is it unfair to make one
It needs to be the same.
Right.
So
I
I
would
think
say.
what you need to do is frame out the time, reach out to the candidates and just,
So
you
what day
have
is
the
school
6th to be,
available?
like, if you have to have the decision of when you're going to interview them on camera, you're meeting next Tuesday. So you could say next Tuesday, our interviews are going to be,
Right, so that, I think we need to involve Tracy, and we just need from you, Carol, which days are not, the school is not available for site visits.
Then we would have to get our site visit into their district before. they-
Right,
Mhm.
yes, so that's why,
right. I
you
would
know, we
start
can
with
say
their
that we can give
district
them from
first.
now until the 7th to get their site visits, and we could potentially have the schools available on the 8th, the 12th, and we can't do the 13th,
No, we can do the 13th.
so the 8th, the 12th, and the 13th.
It's for visits, yes.
For their visit.
For their visits here, you could do
The 8th, the 12th, and the 13th,
yes,
okay.
one of those days, and then you could decide to have your interviews 2 on the 14th, or 1 on the 14th, 1 on the 15th, however you want to do it.
8th, 12th, and-
And Carol, when you're talking about structuring the visits here, you would be able to structure their day
Yeah,
in terms of groups and
Yep.
where to have them go, all of
Yep.
that.
Yep.
So then we could potentially just be responsible for structuring the public session and kind of arranging that piece, because that would definitely have to be virtual.
yep.
And that public piece, we're saying would be
And
in
then
the
you would
evening.
participate as the moderators.
Thank you.
Okay, well,
So just to clarify, because I'm like,
Well-
so, go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
No.
see where you go first.
I was gonna clarify dates, so if you want to say something before, then go ahead.
No, I didn't hear clarification of dates. Go ahead.
Our visits to them, because I'm gonna be writing Tracy an email, we can say at any point from basically the 4th, oh, not the 4th, because I'm on March again. From, go ahead, you're already looking on yours, it's like, from the 1st to the 9th would be our potential visits to them, correct? April 1st to April 9th.
That's Thursday.
April 1st to Thursday. I
Okay.
need a little bit of time as far as if they choose April 1st to plan to not be present in my room.
Right.
So,
Was that, did we say April 1st? I missed it, or was it April 2nd?
you thought it was April 2nd.
okay.
I
so
did too.
April 2nd to the 9th.
Okay.
That's a week.
I didn't know if we wanted to just try to capitalize as much time as possible. April 2nd to the 9th would be our visits to them. They have the opportunity to visit here on either the 8th, the 12th, or the 13th. Correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, and then interviews on the 15th.
Or 14th and 15th. Or
I,
do we want to do both?
in one night.
Okay.
I thought we were gonna do both in one night. 'cause
I
there's
did too.
Only one.
So do we want to do the 14th or the 15th? I guess.
I say the 15th in case
Okay.
anything gets, gives us a day of wiggle room as far as
Yeah.
if something happens and someone needs to reschedule.
Right.
We could have a friggin' April snowstorm, any one of those things, right?
For clarity purposes too.
They're gonna come to the school during the day, and then they're going to go home and do their night thing that same day.
That's how I'm envisioning it.
Okay.
Because I think in order to involve the community as much as possible, it makes sense to have it later in the evening. And so then it wouldn't make sense to just kind of hold them here. When we certainly want to involve the community. So if people are okay with that, that's, I guess, where my mind went, is thinking about like a 6 o'clock time or something like that
It would be different if we could have the meet and greet
in person.
in person, because we could have it be from a 4 to 6, and people that can get here early would be here and be able to trickle in and out. But I would say let them end and, give them a chance to go home, have a hot minute, and then be on the
Yeah,
Zoom for
so
6.
I'm thinking like a 9 to 1 visit at the school,
Okay,
because by then both schools will be, in session,
Mhm. And one other piece that we did not mention, but we did talk to Tracy about, Audrey and I did, is that in order to get feedback, we did talk to Tracy about a Survey Monkey so that it was an anonymous survey, so that school committee would be able to get feedback. And she would, Tracy would kind of run that and capture that so that it was kind of a very transparent process, and then just share the results with us. So that we had information from, staff, community, everybody.
And it's their Survey Monkey account, so Survey Monkey's anonymous anyway, but it happens to be their account. She would just provide some feedback from it.
All right, so I feel like we're making progress here. So what we need is Tracy needs to reach out to the candidates as soon as possible, because then we need to schedule our time for their visits, the site visits at their school. And that's just us, two of us. Can't be any more than two of us.
Correct. And our visits to them are virtual. Their visit here is in person, but the community visit's virtual, but the interview is in person.
And we're doing, just to clarify, we're doing both interviews in person on the same night, and there will be a community also portion of that, or is that just us? The community part will be over at that point.
There is no community part, as I understand there. It's
At that point, no.
At that point, okay.
So I just have a clarifying question. I'm setting up groups of staff to come talk with the candidate. We're not Zooming that. People are going to be able to come to a space for that to happen.
right.
I think as long as you can accommodate that with all
Well,
your,
That's what I wanted to know, so that I could make sure that we can accommodate that.
Right, agreed. And Carol, I did add that when we were talking to Tracy, I created a whole document. It's now in a folder that has that superintendent search where it kind of listed more clarity to the things that we needed to do. About a half an hour with each group, like it gets into some detail.
And that's in the school committee folder you put it in.
It's in the school committee folder in a folder titled superintendent search.
Okay,
The folder for today.
In
Okay.
today's folder,
okay,
correct.
perfect.
so I think that covers everything with dates and visits and setup. It's questions, and the other part of that for the interview process is one other piece that we'll have to talk about. And we certainly have our April 6th meeting as well, where we can kind of continue to do that. But I guess just something to think about is that while we don't want to, obviously discuss like the exact question that we're going to just, ask, it does have to be done, as part of our meeting.
Right, so maybe during next meeting, we can have the opportunity with everyone being together to have looked over those questions a little better, and maybe Jen, you're like, I'll do the budget questions, or whatever, you kind of each pick like a subheading and then pick at least 2 questions, if not more. That's also in that paper with how many questions that we should be asking. I want to say she had said 13, that's the number.
Yeah, she said approximately 12 questions.
Okay,
Because she said you want to, aim for about an hour, and
And
she
that's
said
actually another
that's
thing we
about
discussed.
12.
is whether or not we wanted to go into that document and star.
But that I think might make more sense if everyone's here.
Together.
But I just
Okay.
wanted, if, people just are aware of it, then you can just kind of be familiar with the document, and that might just be helpful. Okay, moving forward.
So some people are gonna have more than 2 questions.
You want it to be you, Jen?
I feel like that's clear as mud. It's awesome.
Oh.
Woo! Okay. All right, so are we in a good spot? Because I'm not really sure if we're in a good spot. I'll be perfectly honest. I feel a little better about it, but it's hard to make our schedule when we have to have this back and forth with the candidates. And I didn't realize that was going to go through Tracy. So we'll just have to wait and see. And for this, I think you can let us know by email what it is. As long as we don't reply to all, we can have that kind of I say discussion loosely, but we can make forward progress on,
Like just a notification.
right, notification, like, okay, one of the candidates, we can do their site visit on the 3rd, who's available, and, we can figure it out. And the other thing is, because there's only 2 of us, if someone can only be available for part of the time, we can sort of tag team, I think, because we're interviewing with different groups of people. So, if Jen has a meeting from 11 to 1, and I'm available, but I can't do it the other time, we can make that part work too. So I think because of the flexibility. Say it again?
Especially with it being on a Zoom, like it's not like you're driving. and,
Right,
you know,
right.
It does add a little ease.
So I think that's another sort of bonus for us, that we can, between the 5 of us, we should be able to make the times work, even though so I think we're giving a lot of options, as many as we can, and trying to stick to our timeline. Ally, do you think we're in a good spot? Sheila.
No, I'm still here. No, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's a pretty big job, and I would hate to, drag it through the end of April. Life isn't fast forward, as you know, and I think your timeline looks good.
All right. Well, thank you. I think we've done the announcement and we've done the discussion. Yeah, so we're in a good spot. All right. Jacqueline, I hope you got all of that clear as mud. We're good.
Don't worry, she can listen to it.
She can listen over and over and over. All right, next up is visitors' comments. Any citizen wishing to speak before the committee must announce who you are, because it's not signing in. And you have 3 minutes. Do we have any questions today? Hope to hear from some people. How many attendees? From here, it looks like 119.
17.
17.
Close.
It's parentheses.
You're at 500.
Yeah. It's awesome.
17 here, 16 in YouTube.
All right. Questions, going once? Oh, yay. Okay, I can't read the name.
Hey, guys.
Okay. Go ahead, Jay. Please identify yourself, name and address. You're still on mute. Jay, if you can hear me, you're still on mute.
Can you hear me?
We can now.
Oh, okay, that's good. Jay Joyce, 18 Jennifer Drive. And I know you all know me, but for the record, I guess I better say that the chairperson of Granby's Energy Committee, the chairperson of Granby's Economic Development Committee, on the Select Board, and I'm also a commissioner with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission as well. The main reason for me being here tonight, we've got another amount of funding for the school. We're going to do the first floor lights. We're going to convert them to LED. As you know, previously, we've already done the boiler room this year, and we've done the second floor with a custom LED wireless lights, because it's all concrete and you can't string wires through brick. That first award was $233,000. This one's slightly smaller. It's only $78,000. The parts are on order now, and as soon as we get notification that the parts are in, we'll give you a holler up. And that's about it, except everybody probably already knows all those positions I named, I will be all done as of 17 May of this year. So.
Thanks for
That's
your
it.
service, Jay. We appreciate it.
No problem. If you guys need anything, you know how to get a hold of me.
Okay, thank you for the information too about the lights. That's great.
Yeah, Stephen and I talked earlier today, and he was gonna tell Carol, and I told him I'd come on and let you guys know.
Excellent.
Yep.
Thanks very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments? We'll give it a second. All right, I think we're good. Okay, moving on to new business. The first thing on the agenda is to vote on a technology donation.
David, I don't know if you want to. Here,
So we.
here, you can take my seat.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah.
So we routinely get donations from different individuals, organizations who have been very grateful throughout the years. Most recently, CBS, Connecticut Business Systems, the firm that provides our print management services and our photocopiers, donated for network printers to us. They've done this several times already. Sometimes these are devices that have very low mileage on it, that they had in another client's facility, and that client needed to switch it out maybe for a different model, like a color model or something like that. Sometimes they were almost brand new. Look at the odometer. I've had it before where they've had like 20 pages on it. Someone printed 20 pages and turned it in. So these are in great condition. We will be using them to replace some of the oldest devices on the network that we have a hard time getting parts for. So it'll be very helpful. So I come to the school committee usually a couple times, 2-3 times a year, asking me to approve these per policy. And then once that's done, I deploy them.
Excellent. So does anyone have any questions?
I do. Can you repeat the name of the company that was donating?
Connecticut Business Systems, it goes by CBS. It was stuff that they circulated in from another client. So they facilitated that for us.
And like David said, they're currently our vendor that we get all of our new equipment from, so.
And they have done this several times. They've been very helpful.
That's great. All right, any other discussion? Can I have a motion to vote on the, did you say 4?
4, yes.
4 printers from CVS?
Make the motion.
Second?
Okay.
Any further discussion? Anything else? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
all right, next up is a vote on spring sports. Ally?
Hi again. So I'm just looking for your final approval for spring sports. As of right now, everything is going to be running with modifications to each individual sport, as well as complying with social distancing and safety guidelines for each sport. The only sport right now that has been moved to spring 2, which overlaps with the spring regular season, is wrestling. I'm still trying to work out the details for that. I have made some progress with hiring coaches in the last week or so, so I'm really excited for that. Just a little bit more hiring left to do and looking for your stamp of approval.
Any questions for Ally? All right, can I have a motion to approve spring sports?
A motion to approve spring sports.
Second? All those in favor? Aye. Was that all, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just double checking through of, we had talked at one point about spectators and all that, so.
Yep, I can address the spectators. I allowed spectators to attend the outdoors basketball game last week, and everybody was pretty compliant. You know, I had the signs out there. It's a really cool setup that we have back there in back of East Meadow. we're really, really grateful to have that set up. So I do, send sincere thanks to Bill and his crew over at East Meadow, because without that court, we wouldn't be able to play. So we did add some pole padding. I actually had a couple of the community service members actually add it for me. I'm laughing because one of them was Miss Bartos's daughter. So it was actually really nice to have that. So we're making some small improvements to the courts, and yes, spectators, everybody was compliant. If people are not compliant, we'll send them packing, but I did send out the guide to all the schools. It's a visitor's guide that outlines what the expectations are. So that was sent out to all the athletic directors in our bubble. So as of right now, I'm, have a pretty good pulse on it. And, I look forward to the spring season and having spectators home and away.
I have a follow-up question too, and maybe even Alex. Is Alex going to continue to be airing some of those games and that their practices games and that? So, yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Alex has been tremendous. He has done an amazing job with GCAM, and I applaud and commend him for his commitment to our sports program through this pandemic. Yes, he was having a little bit of difficulty with the Wi-Fi from East Meadow streaming out, but I talked to David about it today, and we have a plan in place. I can foresee it being a little tricky for the spring, but again, it's the same place. So I could foresee baseball, just because I don't know how far the wireless, the Wi-Fi will extend all the way out to the baseball fields. As you know, varsity baseball is pretty far down in the back. But that's the plan, and we'll do the best that we can. So I'm hoping with allowing spectators, we can continue both options.
I think that's great. Thank you for adding that out there.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Do we need to revote, or is everybody good? Okay. All right, next up, fiscal year 22 budget. Oh,
Jump to D, because Ally's here and
Oh,
she
sure.
wants to speak to that.
okay, so we're gonna go to the amendment to senior privileges for lunch. Ally? We'll dump that one, then we'll leave you with maybe it's Steven?
Steve.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna just take that one, and I'll try to keep it short. So the reason we're asking for an amendment to this is partially what we've discussed before in terms of our capacity and lunches. So this is a policy already in place that seniors can have privileges to have open campus during lunchtime. And basically we're asking to open that up to our juniors. So with parental permission, that they would be able to leave campus for lunch and return. So for each lunch, they have about a half an hour. So it would allow students to either go home and have lunch. It would allow students to go to Subway and grab something to eat. And also help with some of the capacity issues that we're trying to avoid. So by having the outdoor seating, we're working with the Board of Health and hopefully going to be able to get some seats even in the gym. We're trying to remedy that, so we still can't use it for phys ed, but and having this as another option, we're just a little bit worried about having 80 students at lunch at a given time. And we can do it at 6 feet apart, but even at that, like some of the optics of it, I just have questions about. So we're just trying to think creatively, and we know some other surrounding districts have done things like this. So we're asking just for this year. We have amended it a little bit where in the past, the SRO has reviewed it. So if a student had any moving violation, they wouldn't have access to it. At this point, we're looking just for the parental permission, and it's pretty clear that if a student violates it in any way, those privileges could be revoked immediately by administration.
And like you said, it would be for this year only.
Correct. Just through the close of the 2021 school year.
Do you need us to vote on it? Yeah, okay, it doesn't say vote on the agenda.
Yeah, we'll need a vote, be it tonight or next week. I think I think some of our juniors are hoping sooner than later, but if you need some time to think on it, I don't think that's a problem on our end.
Okay, well, did everyone get a chance to read it? Do we have any other questions?
I think it's in the folder.
Yep. It is, there's two things that are there. So if voted to approve, it'll be into that policy JHCA with just an expiration date, right? For just this year is what we're saying, or can it just stand alone and not even go?
For this year.
Yeah, for this year only. We can just have it amended, have the form amended to have a date on it. Is everyone comfortable making a vote tonight, or do you want to push it off to next week? I feel like it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think that adding on the date,
Yeah, the last day of school of fiscal year 2021.
but I'll make the motion.
So make the motion with the amendment. Do you mind adding that date, Stephen, to the form?
Of course.
Okay. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Now let's go to the preliminary budget.
Okay, I'm gonna try to share my screen here. Hopefully this works. Alex, I'm assuming that's what also everyone sees at home. We're good. Okay, so as everyone can see, we're going to go over the FY22 preliminary budget. Before I get into it, the subcommittee, myself, the subcommittee, and Carol have been meeting weekly, a couple times a week over the last month or 6 weeks, coming up with this budget and then essentially the presentation that we're going to show everyone tonight. Decided to give a real high level presentation of the budget and kind of break it down so it's a little more understandable to the community, the rest of the committee. So that's what this is tonight. The hopes were for tonight to get into the actual details of the budget. And then after much consideration and discussion with the subcommittee, we thought it'd be better to kind of give this high level shot of the budget. And then we can talk about it and go from there on what our next steps will be. I don't know if either Jen, you guys want to add anything or chime in, obviously, when we go through it. Good. So this first slide, I'm sure everyone's familiar with it. It's our strategic plan. And I just like to put that in there every year and just remind everyone that, this is what we tie all of our budgetary requests to is, the 4 main parts of the strategic plan. The first one, offer innovative and continuous learning experiences, celebrate success and engage community, focus on social, emotional, and physical well-being, and proper resources to sustain best possible learning environment. So again, I like to throw that in there at the beginning just to remind us all of our objectives and what we're really tying the budget to each year in each request that we make, whether it be staffing or supplies or technology, whatever it is, we are tying each one of those decisions back to our strategic plan. So again, I like to put that in there just to remind everybody that, this is how we develop it and kind of stay the course as we're building our budget. Okay, so next slide. So these are the topics and the pieces of the budget that we're going to review tonight. And we'll get into some more details in the next few slides. But I just wanted to capture what we're going to go over. So first is our Chapter 70 revenue. And you can see the arrow next to it is signifying a decrease from Chapter 70 revenue in FY21 to our projected FY22 revenue. And this is the revenue that is essentially generated by our enrollment. And that enrollment is then parsed into certain categories, which produces allocations, which essentially ends up calculating out to our Chapter 70 revenue. So again, the comparison from FY21 to FY22 is our Chapter 70 revenue decreased. However, it was less than $1,000, but I wanted to make sure that was noted. The next part of our allocation from the state is the required local contribution, and that's the funds that the state, based on multiple formulas, essentially tells the town or community they have to fund the schools at. And when you combine our Chapter 70 revenue and our required local contribution, that's where we get our required net school spending number, which is the amount in total that a district is required to spend on instruction and education in a district. The additional town allocation, this was the 305 allotment that was a separate article many years back. And after that first year, the town generously agreed to keep funding it for us at that 305. Last year, it was reduced by 100,000 to 205. And preliminary talks this year is that it will be reduced by another $100,000 to $105,797. Again, we'll get into the numbers in the next slide. Transportation, that doesn't change. It's a 3-year contract. That amount stays the same over 3 years. The good thing is that obviously it stays the same for 3 years, and we know where and what to budget. However, when we do usually go out for a new contract, there is a significant increase because obviously, even though our cost has stayed the same for those 3 years, the costs are going up, and we essentially realize those in the next contract. So transportation, we'll be in the second year of transportation contract. So that stays the same. The town, state / local revenue. So this is my way or our way of capturing essentially all of the money that the town or the school, the revenue that we get either from the state formula or from the town in their additional town allocation or in transportation. So again, when our Chapter 70 goes down, the required local contribution decreases, the additional town allocation decreases. Obviously, our revenue, the local revenue, is going to decrease as well. Town in kind. So these are services that the town essentially charges back to the school department. It's employee retirement, it's employee health insurance, it's charter school and school choice sending out tuition, meaning we pay for the kids that choice out of our district, as well as some administrative costs for assisting the schools in processing payrolls, processing warrants. There's a maintenance and operations portion to that. The town provides us sand and salt during the winter time. They prep our ball fields and fields in the back for the spring, which they just did last week. So there's some costs that the town charges back to the school. As you can see, our in-kind contribution went up this year, and essentially the increase is in employee retirement and employee insurance. We're all well aware that insurance costs are going up. So that's where the increase is for the in-kind contribution this year. So when we take the total state local revenue line and the town in-kind contribution line, the net of that is the actual town allocation to the school. What I like to call is the check or the actual cash that the town is going to give the school department to operate for the fiscal year. Which the next line is the school operating budget. And then the school the town school funding gap is essentially what the school's operating budget is less what we're being funded by the town. And that's the gap that we have to solve for every year, essentially with our grants and revenues. The next line, projected revenue offsets. These are our grants, entitlement grants, Title I, Title IIA, Title IV, IDEA. The current fiscal year 21 and FY 22, there'll be CARES and ESSER stimulus money that we'll use to help offset that funding gap. And then the bottom line, the projected deficit. So the actual bottom line number after we offset the gap with all of our revenues, what are we left with at the end of the day? Any questions or comments? Clarity before I move on to the next slide where we'll get into the numbers of these sections. Good.
Well,
I think Audrey looked to the next page, which she cheated a little bit, but no, that's okay.
Put all the arrows down and up.
Yep. So again, this is a snapshot of the last 3 or the last 2 fiscal years, and then obviously projections for FY 22. So it's all the categories we just highlighted in the previous slide with some numbers associated to them. And obviously the glaring number is the bottom number, the funding gap of 2.4, which has increased over the last 3 fiscal years. So essentially at the end of the day, that is the number we have to solve for using our revenue offsets, like I mentioned, grants and revolving funds. Looking at these numbers now, is there any questions on how we got to them? The formula? I would say, so the second to last line, the school operating budget, that's the actual number that it costs for the school department to operate, to essentially operate, open its facilities on a year-to-year basis. It is that $10.6 million. It's a 1.1 increase over our operating budget from fiscal year 21. We did have a pretty big jump in operating budget from FY 20 to FY 21. That's in part to your normal contractual negotiated salaries, always go up each year, but we also made a big push for technology between those 2 fiscal years. So there were some increased costs between FY 20, FY 21, and then again, a 1.1 increase from the current year FY 20 to our projected FY 22 budget.
And when you're talking technology, some of that we ended up spending quicker than we had anticipated because there was a huge push. I mean, with COVID, right? We ended up buying a ton of Chromebooks and improving infrastructure. So I just want to point out that part of that gap was not because necessarily we wanted to, we were sort of.
It was a couple of different things. It was we were still trying to finish up implementing the full 1-to-1 across the district where everybody had access to a Chromebook. And then obviously COVID hit. Now that's not reflected in these numbers, but you're right. So we accelerated that process. But I just want to point out that there is a huge jump from 20 to 21, but there were some district initiatives that we funded in that year that got us to where we are today. And increased our operating budget from FY 21 to our preliminary projection for FY 22 is only 1.1%. And essentially the biggest increase in that is, again, contractually obligated salaries, either among the units or other personnel contracts. That's essentially what the increase is for FY 22. There is no additional or new asks in this budget, and we're not going to get into that tonight. We will get into that next week when we present the details for each department. But this is essentially the district operating at level service compared to FY 21. Any questions on that?
So we said, and this is looks like a drop in the bucket now, but as far as the town allocation that's not a set in stone, it's just the numbers that are being discussed right now.
Yeah, so it's not set in stone. Right now, the chapter 70 revenue required local contribution, that is in the, that was the preliminary, the governor's preliminary budget. Now, there's still 2 versions left. Typically, they, as they move through the Senate and then, the final vote for the governor, we do see an increase. It's not going to be, a drastic increase, but we will see an increase. But these are based on the governor's preliminary budget numbers as of today.
And it's not guaranteed that we will see an increase.
It's not
this year
guaranteed. No,
because
it's not, it's certainly not
crazy
guaranteed.
times, right?
No, it's certainly not guaranteed. But again, these are, all of this is just based on the information that we have currently. Questions on that? Clarity, comments?
Well, I'm just gonna ask it because I feel like it's, someone's thinking it, so I'm just gonna say, so our school operating budget for 21, we may have been down as far as, like, if you were talking about line by line, like, everyone's gonna be like, oh, you probably saved a bunch in supplies. But we probably increased that because even though we did have some COVID grant money and everything, there's additional supplies that we've been needing, so it's probably a wash. There probably wasn't any kind of a savings, just so that, let's kind of address it. It's a little bit, it's a tiny elephant in the room.
No, that's a good question. So the biggest savings that I think people could probably point to would be in heating or electric, or because our buildings were closed for, most of the year. And we are certainly going to realize some savings. However, to your other point is, we did get about $300,000 or so in COVID stimulus money. But our expenses far exceeded that. And we used that grant money to essentially purchase a lot of PPE supplies, to fund some substitute nurses to help Nancy and her staff with the influx, obviously, of staff and students.
And the HEPA filters.
HEPA filters was a huge cost to that. And that, we paid for them using COVID stimulus grants, but we wouldn't have been able to open and operate without putting the HEPA filters in at least the high school. We used that COVID stimulus money to accelerate technology one-to-one to make sure every kid that was remote learning had access to a one-to-one device. Essentially, if that one-to-one device was broken or something was wrong with it, we had a spare, immediately ready for a student. So, we did see a lot of COVID stimulus money, a lot for the size of our district, but our COVID expenses exceeded, those that we got grant revenue for. So any savings that we have realized in other categories, we will be using that to offset those additional costs. Thank you for bringing that up.
I have a question that kind of just brought to my mind. Now, there must be things that last year that maybe we had allocated, did end up having to go back to the town too, because we didn't use it in our budget?
So are you talking FY21, which is the current fiscal year?
I guess so. So then no, right. I'm thinking at the end of last year.
Yeah, so last year, fiscal 20.
So the end of FY20. Yeah, so the only money that we gave back to the town at the end of FY20 was transportation savings, again, because we realized through the spring when COVID started, we had some savings from transportation. So that money was returned to the town. I'm anticipating and projecting to return more transportation money to the town this year. I don't know at this point exactly what that number is, so I'm not even going to try to speculate, but we will realize some transportation savings again. Obviously, school didn't start up right away. We didn't have transportation right away. So there will be some more savings that we do return to the town.
And just to clarify, it goes back to the town because it's a separate article. It's a separate warrant article that we vote on at town meeting. So it's not part of our overall budget. It's a separate thing. And I have to say that out loud to myself and remind myself, because I'm like, oh, we saved money, we should have it, but it's a separate,
Right.
it's a separate
And
thing.
that's why I kind of want to bring that up too, to make sure that it's
Like, I feel like this is all really new to me too, so.
Mhm. So that is, you're 100% right on that. But also essentially any savings that we had seen, any surplus that we would have at the end of the year, whether it be transportation, and even though it's a separate article, or in our general operating fund budget, technically that money went back to the town anyway. It would be between myself and the town to figure out a way for us to maybe use that savings to offset our budget in the current year, or whatever it may be. So all of our surplus goes back to the town at some point, but the transportation, because it's a separately voted on article at town meeting, that does go back to the town. If there is
Some
savings.
discussions about pre-buying something, like we had some savings and we tried to use it to get ahead.
Yeah, we try to use it to
Like
help
we had-
offset the budget and
Yeah.
yes, and try to limit the impact
Mhm.
it can have in the current fiscal year or the next fiscal year. Yep,
Okay.
correct.
Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on this page? Okay.
Okay, so the next slide is going to just kind of highlight our grants, and these are essentially our grants in the revolving accounts. The revolving revenue that are on here are essentially the major revenue offsets that we have. You know, we have some other smaller grants and revolving accounts that don't really factor in. So these are just highlighting the largest revenue grants and revolving. Title I, Title IIA, and Title IV, those are all, and SPED IDA, they're all what we call entitlement grants. They're allocated based on a formula to every district, mostly every district. We do have to apply for them, but it's not a competitive application. Again, they're allocated through a formula. We apply, and essentially the money is given to us. You'll see in FY22 compared to FY21, I just funded them at the same amount because we won't get those preliminary allocations. Probably, we're getting close, maybe another month or so. But it's hard to assign a percent increase to that. It wouldn't accurately show what the increase would be. So I just level funded it for this year. One thing that is missing from there that we know we're going to get, we just don't know at this point when and how much, is the third stimulus package, which is the ESSER, the third ESSER CARES allocation that we're going to get. There's some talks on what the allocation may look like, some preliminary projections. I'm not even going to get into them because I don't want us to get held to those projections, but that money is not included in this. Those will be able to be spent over multiple fiscal years. So the funding that we see, the bottom line of the grants, the CARE/ESSER, the 292,000. So that is money that will be made available to us July 1 of FY21, so the start of FY22. And we will have until September of 2023 to spend that money.
No, I'm just gonna ask a question because I think it's a grant, but it may not have been. And Robin brought it to us. It was, like a rural thing, and there was supposed to be some, I forget what it was called, but I thought it was kind of like a grant thing or something, like the rural.
So I vaguely, what I think you may be talking about is like the Rural Impact on the Student Opportunity Act, which would, So that wasn't a grant. What that is it goes along with the Student Opportunity Act, where they're trying to, where they have relooked at the formula in Chapter 70 and realized that a lot of the categories have been underfunded for years. And now the Student Opportunity Act is kind of, it looked at those categories and realized that the funding levels were inadequate, and that, they're funding them at a different, in a different formula. That was part of it. So it's not a grant separate from that.
Okay.
But it's essentially a push. If I'm remembering correctly, it's really a push to look at these rural districts where the Student Opportunity Act really benefits, a Springfield or a Holyoke or Lawrence or Boston, these cities that have high special education or ELL populations, where the formula is really, designed to help them. And what Robin was highlighting is that, we have these small little districts like ourselves who don't benefit from that, but we still need the funding. It's still just important for us to get that funding. So I believe that's what you're talking about. It's not a separate grant. It's just how the money's allocated in chapter 70.
Oh, okay, because I thought she was saying that we might get an extra so much or whatever.
Yep,
So
yep.
in my
We
head,
would
that-
see that in chapter 70.
okay.
Yep, we would
But
see that in chapter
that
70.
we're saying is gonna be down because that's based on enrollment.
Chapter 70 is based, so again, without going down this, chapter 70 is based on a snapshot of enrollment at
At a
one
given
time in the
time,
year. And that's what they base our chapter 70
Fund.
foundation budget on for the following fiscal year.
Okay,
Yes, it's a snapshot and it's essentially a moving target.
gotcha.
Did they do, did they give funds for the, hold on, just went out of my head. But you were just talking.
Student Opportunity Act?
Yeah.
Yes, so it was funded. I don't know if I think they pushed off the funding from 21 because of the pandemic. But I do believe we saw, they implemented those changes into this year's chapter 70. Yep.
Right, 'cause I remember they put a hold on it.
Yep.
Okay,
I will clarify that for you though.
yeah.
Any questions on the grants before we move to the next section? Again, they're entitlement grants. We're allocated based on a formula. We apply for it and essentially the money is given to us. So the next section, revolving. So this is money that essentially we have full discretion over. Athletics. So I'll be honest, this is going to be, this is going to be tough this year. Obviously, we didn't have athletics in FY21, where Ally generates a lot of her revenue is gate fees for basketball games, students signing up to play varsity sports. And we generate our revenue for athletics with those fees. Obviously, with the lack of athletics over the last year, that revolving account is, is not where we'd like it to be. And without really knowing what the landscape for the fall is going to be for going back to school, this is really just a projection that we're going to use based on prior years. So again, and I want to remind everyone, these are projections, preliminary projections. Don't hold us to these numbers. So athletics is one of those where we know, once we know what returning to school will look like in the fall, hopefully we'll understand a little more on what sports may look like in the fall. Circuit breaker. So circuit breaker is the revenue from the state where it's us servicing our special education students above and beyond a certain dollar amount. Anything above that, we are reimbursed on a percentage. Again, I use the same amount as revenue from last year because the file for circuit breaker, we're going to start in the next month or so. Completing that file, once we go through all those calculations, we'll know what our revenue will be. Again, it's one of those where I couldn't consciously assign a percent increase or decrease to it because we don't know. We wouldn't be able to do that. School choice. So school choice, this is a projection based on our school choice enrollment, what we have now, the kids that we're obviously projecting to keep for next year, and then assuming we're going to fill at least the amount of seats for the outgoing seniors. So that's how this projection is calculated. That could go up, that could go down. Again, without really knowing the landscape of next school year, that's a really tough number to project as well. And the sped revolving account. So this is a revolving account that we've over the last couple of years, we've had a student from Holyoke who's tuitioned in. We've charged Holyoke an amount for that tuition. That money goes to this account. We use that money to pay for supplies for him, pay for the paraprofessional that is assigned to him. So we use that money to offset the costs that are directly, for the most part, associated with him. However, he is scheduled to graduate next year, correct? June of 22. So that will be, unless we get somebody else in, that revenue will be going away at the end of next year. So all in all, between our grants and the revolving accounts, it totals, you can see there, 1.7 million in revenue that we use to then offset that funding gap. Questions on revenue, how it's generated, how we use it?
This is what we directly use to decrease.
Yeah, in a perfect world, right, we'd be using at least our school choice revenue to be making enhancements to the high school, making enhancements to our athletic fields, using that money to do things that isn't budgeted in our operating fund. However, in Granby, we use all of it, some of it, if not all of it, to offset our operating budget, which is not, it's not the best practice. However, we've been fortunate over the last few years to be able to use that revenue to help offset our budget and decrease some of the liability to the town. But as you can see, or as you will see in the next slide, that's just not going to be sufficient this year. So I apologize, I lied. So this is just a 3-year in-kind comparison. So I had mentioned at the beginning, in-kind is services that the town essentially charges the school district back. Administrative services, again, most of that is for the towns helping us process payrolls, process warrants, maintenance and operations, that's providing sand and salt to us in the wintertime, doing our ball fields. Trash is in there. The town holds the trash pickup contract, and then we're charged back accordingly. And then you can see the major factors are employee retirement and employee insurance. And then school choice charter, again, this is the tuition that we pay out to other districts where we send our school choice kids to, or kids from Granby attending charter schools.
So there's a pretty, seems like a pretty sizable increase for administrative services.
Mhm.
And it's, and that is, it just, is there a specific thing? Are they doing more for us or?
Nope, they're not doing necessarily more or less for us. Right off the bat, obviously, we're charged a percentage of their overall salaries for either the town accountant or the town treasurer. So we're charged at a percentage of that. It's a very small percentage. So obviously their salaries are subject to normal increases year to year. One of the main things in this year's in-kind compared to last year for administrative services is that they are in need of some infrastructure network updates and modifications at the town. So that is in the in-kind. And again, we're charged at a very small percentage of it, but we are charged for the upgrades that they need to make, because essentially they are servicing us with, processing our payrolls, processing our warrants. So that's where a big increase from the administrative services in FY22 compared to the last 2 fiscal years.
As far as our paying out for charter, do we know how many kids we have out? Like how many are graduating as seniors? So you don't know what's up and coming.
Yep.
Whether that's like a.
Yes, we do. Yep. And we can certainly include that in the plan is for next week to get into these details, but we can certainly provide that that level of detail if you want it in the budget presentation. Any questions on this? Again, these are the costs that the town reduces our level of actual funding they give us by this in FY22, at least in this case, is $2.5 million. Questions, comments, clarity? Okay. So last slide. And I'm assuming everyone's eyes are going to go to that bottom line. So essentially, when all is said and done, and we look at our school operating budget of the 10.653 million, and we look at the gap that is created based on our operating budget, less the actual town allocation to the school, the funding gap's to 2.465. Our projected offsets, as we saw in a couple of previous slides, is 1.773. That leaves us with and I want to highlight this number, a projected, right? Because we're still doing a lot of work to make this budget, to solve for this deficit. The projected deficit as of right now, based on the numbers, the information that we have, is a little less than $700,000 that we need. And when I say we, school department, town, as in collaboration, we need to solve for FY22.
Yay. Okay, so we need to have one hell of a bake sale. Oh, okay.
I hope you're a good baker.
I
can make chocolate chip cookies.
I can make some fun sugar cookies. Yikes. Okay.
So again, questions, comments, concerns, want me to go back and clarify anything if I might have missed something or you guys wrote something down that you wanted to go back to, I'd love to be able to answer them and walk us through any questions or concerns that we may have. I know it's this was some basic information. Again, the plan originally was to get into the details and present you guys with our preliminary budget and hopefully get it voted on. We do have our joint meeting scheduled for next Wednesday, I believe, April 7th. Yeah, I believe it's April 7th because we have school committee April 6th. So April 7th, we have our joint meeting between school committee, select board, and finance committee. Usually in a normal year, we'd like to have that meeting prior to any type of budget information for the school department getting out there. Just the calendars didn't line up with us searching for a new superintendent, select board meetings, finance committee meetings. So next Wednesday is our joint meeting with those collective groups. We'll get into the details and hopefully the conversation about what we can do to to fix this, to essentially help us out. They were fully aware that this was being presented tonight, that this information was going to be out there. We've been in communication with them, so it's not going to be a surprise to them. But we haven't, as a group, been able to kind of review this and talk about it. So again, in a perfect year, we would have done that already, but obviously there's a lot of pressing issues that we're dealing with right now, and our calendars didn't line up.
I guess that was gonna be my follow-up conversation, is it's a group meeting, but to discuss how to solve.
Yep. And I guess at least for me, and you guys can weigh in on it. Certainly Jen can weigh in on it because they're on subcommittee. At least for me, our operating budget only went up 1.1%. Like, we're not asking for anything, out of the ordinary for next year. Essentially, we're asking just for the bare minimum. Just let us operate the same that we have been this year. It's essentially level service. So there's two different types of budgets. Level service, which is what we're asking for. Let us continue to operate the way that we operate. It's going to come at a higher cost, but we're gonna service a district the same level that we did last year. Or there's a level funded budget where you just get that amount and you figure out how to put your service into that amount. So this is our level service budget. It went up by, again, 1.1%, $10.6 million. We're not asking for a lot. And hopefully next week when we meet with everyone, we can have some really good conversations and come up with some different ways or different strategies where we can solve for the projected, I'm going to keep saying that word, the projected deficit based on the numbers that we have now. Because again, one of the big things that is not included in this is the third round of stimulus money. We don't know really what that allocation is going to be. And even if it is an allocation that may be close to having us solve the deficit, that money is really supposed to be used over multiple years, and it's really supposed to be used to be making enhancements to the facilities for us getting kids back in and learning 5 days a week. So it's not included in that number. Once we have some preliminary projections, we'll add it in there. That deficit might decrease or increase based on that, but I just want to highlight that that's not included in our revenue offsets at this point.
And the other thing with that is it's basically a one-time fund.
Yeah, it's,
So it's not, I mean, that'll help offset it. We know what it is and how much. It'll offset some of that deficit, but if we get it for 2 years, we're still gonna be in the same situation if we continue to just level fund and not do anything. We're still gonna have that situation of, having a deficit.
it would be possibly a 1-year fix. And the state and the federal government have been very clear. Essentially, there's really no strings attached to that grant money. We can essentially use it for what we'd like. But it's really meant for us to be making upgrades or enhancements or doing things that directly impact getting the kids back into schools 5 days a week. And again, a 1-year fix, we're right back in this position next year. So I just want to point that out, that revenue is not included. However, even if it was, I don't think it would solve any of our problems as it stands right now.
And I think looking at just revenue in itself, that amount, the huge increase is attributed to the decrease in revenue. That's a big amount that we lost.
I will say this, I wanted to make a point of it, actually, when I was on that slide, it's on the third slide where I kind of, it's the 3-year comparison. So if you guys want to go back to that slide on the second line, the required local contribution in FY21, when all was said and done with the pandemic and they modified allocations, the required local contribution for FY21 was the 5.150 number that you see. However, the preliminary budget, the preliminary governor's number of FY21 was at $5.256 million. So a little over $100,000 more. The town and Chris Martin were very generous at that time to fund us at that level, that $5.2 million, because we just didn't know at that point. We didn't know, the town didn't know really what revenues were going to look like, what budgets were going to look like. So he did agree to fund us at the $5.256 million. Again, later on, once everything was said and done, the required local contribution, essentially what, the minimum the town had to allocate or contribute to us was $5.15 million. So Carol and I talked about it, the subcommittee and I talked about like what number do we want to put in there, the 5.2 or the 5.1. We decided with the 5.1, but I wanted to throw that in there. We did get funded at 5.2. And that's how we were funded for FY21. So
that's almost like that extra brought the additional town allocation back to the 305.
Yeah, I don't want to say it was a wash, but it was, yeah, essentially, yeah.
Close.
Yep. But I did just want to put that out there because, again, at this time last year, we did not know, how this was going to go. And Chris said early on, and the finance committee said early on, you know what, we'll commit to this and we'll revisit it when we know a little more. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, any questions for Adam? Everyone's just absorbing.
So again, I know this was high level tonight. Again, the plan right now is to present the full budget next Tuesday. We can talk offline. I don't know if maybe we want to wait till after that
I was just
joint
thinking about
committee
that. I'm
meeting.
thinking maybe we should wait and have the joint committee meeting and let because we know there'll be a lot of questions
Yep.
and everything, and let's push it off.
The only obstacle we're going to run into is that I believe the tentative date for town meeting is the first week of June. And there's, I believe by law, our articles have to be to Chris 6 weeks prior to that. So we're getting really close to that,
When I
deadline.
handed in my paper, she said, right now it's scheduled for June 5th.
Yep. And I'm not sure what 6 weeks prior to that is. It's probably the end of April or so.
So we have a meeting on the 20th, right?
So she said the 5th, right?
Yeah.
So
You would have to do it on the 20th so that we could.
So the 6 weeks is the 17th. So our meeting is on the 20th. So, well, we have a meeting scheduled on the 15th for the interviews. Can we do it, the interviews and the budget? Let's make it an all-nighter.
I mean, sure. Unfortunately, we're just up
wondering-
against a deadline.
I'm just concerned that if we present the final budget on the 6th to everyone, and then we have the joint committee meeting, the final budget may not be the final budget based on discussion. So we can't present it and then change it, and
But so again,
because then it
it's,
would, no one would know, although that joint committee meeting is a public meeting, right? Everyone will be on it. It'll be publicized. So,
Mhm.
well, we have time before we know if we have to put it on the agenda. So I'd say, why don't you reach out to Jen Silva?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll reach out either to Jen or to Chris and
Or both, and
just clarify that is the 6 week and what that date would be, and to make sure that that's the date we need to get our articles to
Right.
Chris, and then we can back into the date from there.
Sure.
So I'll do that tomorrow.
Anything else for the budget? All right, Carol, superintendent's report.
So I have 2 things. I just wanted to remind families that tomorrow is a full remote day, asynchronous learning, so that teachers and custodians and everyone in the building can get the building ready for in-person learning on October 5th.
No, April.
April 5th, sorry. Okay, a few months.
Wow.
April 5th. And then the other thing I'd like to do is a shout out to all of the donors that have contributed to the Granby to Go virtual food drive. The Granby to Go will be, it's open for 2 more days. It's open till the end of the week. I sent out an email today with the link if you'd like to donate. It is, they had a baseline of reaching $2,500. We are at $2,800 right now. So kudos to everyone that donated. This is, food that goes to our families. We get it from Neighbors Helping Neighbors and the Western Food Bank. So that's pretty exciting. Also, this week, I don't know if people saw it on the website that we had, I'm gonna pull it up, our Green Spoon winner this year, Molly Pinkney, who teaches Spanish at the high school, was nominated by her colleagues and is representing Granby Junior Senior High School this year at a virtual celebration. So kudos to Molly, and we look forward to inviting everybody to the celebration because it's virtual this year and anybody can attend.
Anything else for Carol? Adam?
Yeah, I just have a few things. Food service. I know last time we had talked, we were going to let you guys know the plan for food service. We're going to operate as we've been, even though kids are back in school, mealtime, pickups, the amount of meals, all that for right now is going to stay the same. We're obviously going to monitor the participation and all of that. And if changes are necessary, we'll make them. But as of right now, everything will remain the same for food service for meal pickups.
Excellent.
Second, we've been getting a lot of calls, so I just wanted to put this out here, not us, the police department, the traffic sign, the speed limit sign, the school zone sign in front of the high school is not working. We're working with Jen and Chris Martin to get the let me go back. Right here in 202 in front of the high school in East Meadow, we have one new sign and one old sign. The old sign is the one that's not working. The same for West Street. There's one old sign and one newer sign. We're working to get the newer sign moved from the front of West Street to replace the one
Front of
that is broken in
Really?
here.
You're saying West Street, and I'm wondering, do you really mean West Street?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
there's still school zone signs in front of West Street,
There's
obviously not
two.
operating,
Right.
but we obviously need one now. So we're gonna take one from there, put it in front of this one over here, have two new signs, and hopefully that'll fix the problem. However, the power company needs to be involved with disconnecting the sign in front of West Street. So Jen and Chris Martin are facilitating that conversation. Hopefully that will be done in the near future. We'll get that sign taken down, reinstalled in front, and hopefully we'll have two operational school zone signs. I just know that a few people have brought it to our attention, also the police department's attention. So I just want everyone to know we're aware of it and we're working on it. And then lastly, Stephen touched on this a little bit. He alluded to it about hopefully getting some kids in the gym at the high school to eat. John Sullivan and Stephen have been talking. They came up with a preliminary plan, ran it by Dick. I believe for the most part, Dick was in favor of it, approved it, think it might work to at least be able to offer space in there for lunches. There are some industrial sized fans that we will need to purchase in order to make sure airflow is sufficient in there. There's some modifications we need to make to the doors in and around the gym to accommodate this, but I think we're in a good place on being able to provide space in the gym for kids to be able to eat lunch once we have more kids back in the high school.
All right.
And that was really the quick updates that I have.
Jen, yeah,
I have, that means,
all right. I feel like we missed something because it's only 8:37, so. Make the motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Who's second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.